I think Metroid Prime 4 is one of those games that really gets a bad rap. And there's a lot of things that happen in the background, a lot of things that happen during the development that I think does need to be taken into consideration when you're looking at and judging the game. Now, ultimately, Nintendo's responsible for everything that goes on at their company. And, they have to take full responsibility for every misstep that they had with Metroid Prime 4. But with all that said, with all their problems, I actually think Metroid Prime 4 is a good game. If this was any other company that had launched this game, it would have probably been celebrated. But this just goes to show the level of excellence that is expected from Nintendo. So I wanted to go over a little bit of details, a little bit of things that happened during the development of this game that I guess people don't really think about. Right? Metroid Prime 4 was first announced at E3 June 13, 2017. I remember this announcement. I remember seeing that 4 come across the scene with the Metroid Prime and the blue flames. And I will tell you, I'm a Metroid novice. I always tell people this. I'm not a Metroid loyalist, but I did like Metroid Prime. I even like, what was the one on the DS? I think I had it, Metroid Prime Hunters or something like that. I even liked that game. For a DS game, it was fine for me. It was a little handheld game. It wasn't meant to be something that was groundbreaking, and I enjoyed playing it. I even think it had an online multiplayer element. But 2017, that's a long time ago. And the original studio, it was slated to be developed by Bandai Namco Studios Singapore. Now, there was a lot of things that happened with this development, especially with Bandai Namco. Like, I don't know exactly what happened, and I don't know exactly how bad it was, but apparently, whatever Bandai Namco Singapore delivered to Nintendo or showed Nintendo, they were not pleased with at all when it comes to Metroid Prime. And Nintendo was like, nah, we got to scrap this whole thing. Now, imagine that. Imagine you're Nintendo. You have this game that you're going to put out. You announced it early. There was an interview with Reggie Fils-Aimé at Mashable where he pretty much said they typically don't introduce games until they're like well into the development. But with Metroid Prime, they did something unorthodox. They announced Metroid Prime 4 really, really early because they wanted to make sure fans knew they didn't forget about them. Kudos to Nintendo for that, although it may have been premature to announce Metroid Prime 4, especially now given the information that we have. But that's Monday morning quarterbacking. It's easy to say from the vantage point that we have now, oh, they should have done this, or they should not have said this or said that. Look, I get it. We wanted Metroid Prime 4. When I say we, I'm talking about I wanted it, but the people who are Metroid loyalists, they really wanted Metroid Prime 4. And the fact that Nintendo didn't give them anything after that June 2017 announcement at E3, it was a big deal. People were not rocking with that. People were mad. Years had passed by. So Bandai Namco was pulled off of Metroid Prime 4. Now, mind you, at this point, the last Metroid Prime game was Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, released in 2007. So, in gaming, that 10 years, that's an eternity. People want a new game, especially when they expect that another one is coming. So January 25th, 2019, Nintendo confirms that the development of Metroid Prime 4 is being restarted with Retro Studios announced as a new developer. Now, Retro Studios obviously worked on the originals, which I'm curious as to why Nintendo didn't go with Retro right out the gate. There had to be a good reason. I'm sure there's some articles out there that explain exactly why I didn't go that deep. Maybe Retro had a full plate, couldn't really get to Metroid, which that's a possibility. And if that's the case, Man, how unfortunate. How different would this game have come out, and how differently would it have been received had Retro worked on it from the beginning? I imagine people would have really celebrated the game. It would have probably came out much different, but given that, like, with that information in mind, knowing that this is the case, it kind of makes me, you know, look at this Metroid Prime game and go, with all of the delays, with all of the problems, what Retro delivered with Metroid Prime 4 is actually a great game. And visually, I will tell you, this was my second Switch 2 game. My first, of course, being Mario Kart. And visually, Metroid Prime 4 is absolutely stunning. And I think it shows, rightfully so, the power of the Switch 2. And maybe that's the effect that they were going for. Maybe they knew, okay, this isn't going to be the home run that we expected, but we will at least get to show people what the Nintendo Switch 2 can actually do. It's possible that that's what they were going for. Here's something to consider. Another one of those things that happened during this development that I'm willing to give them a little bit of leeway. When things shifted to Retro, the studio didn't have the structure to make a Metroid Prime game. New staff working on the game also had to learn about the essence of making a Metroid Prime title. This is often a problem with a lot of game studios. You lose people. You're making a sequel to a game. The people who originally worked on a game and really understand it are not there. And I'm assuming this is what happened at Retro Studios. People move on. People move to other companies. People get laid off. People retire. These things happen. And I think it's just a combination of unfortunate events that hit this game. And I think because of that, the game has some missteps, obviously, but it honestly is a great game. It's not the best game it could have been. That's obvious. I think anybody looking at this game can understand that being the case, especially with all the hurdles this game had to overcome. I look back at some articles and some things that were said about this game, and it really makes me judge this game a different way. Now, I already like the game, and I've already told you guys that I love Metroid Prime 4, but this is coming from someone who's not a Metroid loyalist. So if I was a loyalist, maybe I would look at this game differently. I don't know. I don't think I've played through all of the other Metroid titles. With that said, it's easy for me to see this game as the beginning of another trilogy, not necessarily a continuation of the previous Metroid Prime trilogy. And I know some people might look at that and go, oh, that's a cop-out. They should have just continued. But when you look at and think of all the hurdles they had, man, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. There was an article by Forbes in 2019, January 26, 2019, written by Ali Barter. And the title was, Why Restarting the Development of Metroid Prime 4 is Actually Good News. This is the title of the article. I think at this point, I think people understood whatever Bandai Namco Singapore did, it was bad enough that it's better to restart it than to move forward with whatever it is they had. So they were starting fresh. The article starts out by saying Nintendo recently revealed that the development of Metroid Prime 4 had been restarted, and while this may look on the surface to be something you should be worried about, it is actually good news. My gaming compatriot Paul Tassi covered the news from Nintendo that Bandai Namco had been taken off Metroid Prime 4 and Retro Studios is now returning to the series for Metroid Prime 4. This may look scary, but it's worth understanding a few important points about how games are made, and it goes into a bunch of things. Look, there is a lot that goes into making a game, and I could not imagine being retro, coming to this game in 2019, not having the original crew that worked on Metroid Prime, and spooling a team up from scratch to get them to make something that is enjoyable, playable, and visually pleasing. The story, yeah, could it have been better? Yeah, but given all of the missteps with Metroid Prime, and you might look at this and say, well, they had since 2019, that's enough time. Look, it really takes a lot to make a video game. And yes, you're a bunch of programmers sitting at a desk, you know, programming some code, some artists making some levels and all of that. And that sounds simple to you. But if you actually had to execute on this, if you were the one that had to do it, probably wouldn't be so simple. Whatever job you work, whatever job it is you do, it might seem simple to other people, but I am 100% sure if those other people actually did the job, they would say, oh, this is way more complicated than I initially thought. I mean, think, we have people that are taking code that they write down with a computer, artists rendering different sprites and characters and different 3D drawings. All of this comes together to what we play. That's not a small thing. And I think that's something that we really need to consider when we judge Metroid Prime 4. This game is good. This game is really good, and I think it's getting a bad rap. Look, bad press right now rules the world. If something gets bad press, it doesn't matter if it actually has some good qualities, that could really kill a thing. I think bad press is one of the things that has hampered the success of Metroid Prime 4. Now, with that said, I think Metroid Prime 4 is actually fairly successful. I don't think it is a complete flop. It sold something like 200,000 or 300,000 units on the Switch 1, as far as I know, something like 700,000 units on Switch 2. So collectively, it has reached its million units, and it's probably sold a little more than that. That's not a flop. But again, this just goes to show you the excellence that is expected of Nintendo. If it's not a smash hit, people are not accepting it. And I think that's kind of unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate because you can tell that the people who made this game, all of the developers, all the graphic designers, all of the different artists, the sound, incredible. The sounds in this game, the score is incredible. I love the score. It is the ambiance of the score. Oh man, I love it. Now the desert, this is a part of this game that most people have an issue with. Now, maybe it's because I am willing to see the positive in most things. Now, I'm not naive. I understand that sometimes things are just terrible. It is what it is. But when I played Metroid Prime 4 for the first time and I got to the desert, I understood that a desert is a barren wasteland. And I also understood the developers only had so much time to really put into that wasteland. From my research, it seems like they wanted to do more, but they didn't want to delay this game any longer than they have. So they just went with it. Look, we're going to give the people this. There's not going to be much there. It's a desert. It's a wasteland. It's a way to go between worlds. And also, from my understanding, doing a little research, initially they were going to try to make Metroid Prime 4 an open world type game, similar to Zelda. And I think to some degree this is an issue in today's creative space, no matter what it is. If something does well, everyone feels like they have to do that same thing. Let that thing do well, enjoy it, and do something different for other things. I don't think Metroid ever needs to be an open world game. Now, that doesn't mean you can't make a good open world Metroid game. It's very possible. It just doesn't have to do that. Metroid is what it is. Metroid Prime is what it is. And I think this game is good. I think this is one of the better games on the Nintendo Switch 2. I think this is one of those games that shows the graphical ability of the Nintendo Switch 2. And I really think the game gets a bad rap. And with that said, I'm just going to say, I love this game. I love the visuals. And I think this game will probably be looked at in the future when people go back. And I think many people will say, man, I think we came down a little hard on that game. There was a lot of expectations of Metroid Prime 4, and sometimes your expectation isn't feasible. Sometimes what you expect is not always what you get, but it doesn't mean what you get is bad. Now, I know there's going to be Metroid Prime loyalists in the comments that are going to go crazy. You're wrong. Look, I'm willing to be wrong. I admit I am not a Metroid Prime loyalist. I'm a visitor here. But as a visitor, I'm saying I thoroughly enjoyed this game. And I think there are many people like me who are visitors who also thoroughly enjoyed this game. Now, I've played some of the other Metroid Prime titles. I haven't played through all of them. I believe I played Metroid Prime 1 on the GameCube, if I'm not mistaken. And I enjoyed that game. So it's not like I'm completely unfamiliar, but again, I think this is an enjoyable game that was to some degree bogged down by expectations and nostalgia.